The U.S. Mexico border. The situation has been called an invasion, a national emergency, and a humanitarian crisis. But what's really happening at the border? To get to the bottom of it, we really need to look at the past. When Trump first came into power, one of his biggest campaign promises was building a wall along the border, a strategy of stoking fears. The issue became such a hot political button that it took away from what was really going on at America's southern border. An influx of asylum seekers seeking protection in the United States after making treacherous journeys with their families. As it turns out, though, the rate of migrants trying to cross the border has been at an all-time low. Although there's an ongoing debate about the definition of apprehension, data shows that crossings peaked in the year 2000, when roughly 1.6 million migrants were apprehended. Since then, the numbers have generally decreased, but have fluctuated in the last 10 years. So the volume of migrants isn't the issue here, it's the changing demographics. Before the Obama era, it was predominantly single males looking for work who made the journey. But around 2014, a shift happened. Children traveling with their families in search of refugee status were showing up at unprecedented levels.
So the majority of families who are coming to the U.S. southern border are from the Northern Triangle, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. And these are countries that have been going through some incredibly difficult times.
Under international and U.S. law, people arriving at the U.S. border have the right to request asylum. Asylum may be granted to people or refugees who are unable or unwilling to return to their home country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. But as Trump settled into his presidency, he hasn't been able to build a wall. Instead, experts say he has found another way to cater to his core group of supporters.
So one thing that he can do is implement policy after policy after policy that tries to essentially shut down the U.S. asylum system.
As part of a broader border crackdown, Trump instituted a zero-tolerance policy in April 2018, calling for every undocumented border crossing to be prosecuted criminally. In the past, when someone crossed the border without inspection, it was considered a misdemeanor, unless someone had done it several times or was caught smuggling drugs or people.
But the zero-tolerance policy that this administration put into effect said every single person, every single adult who has crossed that border, not at a port of entry, is going to be criminally prosecuted for that misdemeanor.
This has resulted in the separation of thousands of children from their families.
Their hair was matted, they were dirty, they had not had regular access to showers, toothpaste, soap. They were not getting enough food, they were exhausted, and many of these children had actually been separated from adult caregivers, from aunts, from grandparents, from people who they love and trust and rely on to take care of them, but they have been left alone in basically a jail cell.
The policy stirred an international outcry.
Immigration, the outcry over the separation of families.
After mounting pressure, Trump walked it back 2 months later with an executive order.
Mr. President, don't you have kids?
But advocates say separations continue to happen.
What often happened under the previous administration was once people were past that first credible fear screening, meaning there was a significant chance that they were going to succeed in their asylum claim, they were often released. And that's because they're not a danger to the community, they're not a flight risk, and there's not enough bed space to hold everybody.
What's different today is that these people are no longer being released, even if they pass their credible fear screening and have a significant chance they'll prevail in their asylum claim.
And so that's when we started seeing this vast expansion of, first of all, building of a lot of these tents. They call them soft-sided facilities, but they're basically just giant tents. And also seeing these severe situations of overcrowding in these detention centers, which were never built for kids and families in the first place, and were also not built for people to stay for a long time.
Metering is also a recent practice that's been implemented at the U.S. Mexico border. U.S. Customs and Border Protection uses metering as a way to manage the flow of people seeking entry at official ports, capping the daily number of asylum applications received at official border crossings. Immigration experts say the process is being deliberately slowed down to deter people from coming. However, there's no data to show that fewer families have been coming.
People are in such dire, dangerous circumstances that they're going to leave regardless of how terribly our current administration treats them at the border. I mean, it's worse where they're coming from. So, this effort at deterrence by cruel treatment isn't really working.
Migrants have been huddled in makeshift detention centers in Mexico, waiting for their turn to make their case to the U.S. government. Most migrants are traveling from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, fleeing gangs, violence, and corruption back home. Migrants travel roughly 1,500 kilometers to reach Texas, the shortest route to the United States, and close to 3,500 kilometers to arrive in California. During their journeys through Mexico, they face the risk of extortion, kidnapping, physical and sexual assault, and human trafficking. Some are resorting to a network of cargo freight trains known as La Bestia. Migrants travel on top of these trains. Many fall off, losing limbs or even dying in the process. Others are targeted by criminal gangs who board the trains and charge travelers a fee. Migrants who do not pay can be beaten, thrown off the train, or left for dead.
The journey is not one that anyone would take lightly. And I think that's really important to remember when the Trump administration claims that all these migrants are claiming, making fraudulent claims of asylum, that they are trying to game the system. People don't leave their home countries unless they have to, unless what they're facing at home is so much worse than the dangers that they face along the way.
Thanks for watching Global News. If you like what you saw, like the video. Also hit the subscribe button to get the latest international news and best trending videos.